So back in my day, to make computers look really, really cool, we used to take old Compaqs and Dells and jam Christmas lights in there. I'm not even kidding. Single color Christmas lights. These are before the days of RGB lighting, or really where just computer customization in general took off. Eventually, we got to the point where we had those long tubes that you'd put in there that were a single color, and if we wanted to change the colors, we had to remove them and then put new ones in, and we liked it that way. And then eventually we got UV lights, and we would we would dress up our wires in different materials so that it would reflect that UV lighting. And finally, now we have RGB lights. Actually, they've been around for a little while now, but apparently I'm just old. And you might be wondering, John, how old are you? Are you old enough to be shopping for your midlife crisis? Maybe, but we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about the Prismatic Controller from PDP. Now, this is very similar to the controller that we've already looked at that had the audio port on it. It was like their Deluxe Plus audio that also had macro buttons on the back of it. This one is a bit different though. It is their Afterglow branding, and that means that it has lights inside the controller, and these ones happen to be color changing, so you can change between the full color spectrum and kind of customize it how you want. So we're gonna talk a bit about this controller today, unbox it. I've already taken this exact controller basically. It has LED lights in there apart, so I'll leave a link to that video if you want to see this controller pretty much torn down there. Now the front of the box has like the color changing on the front there to kind of showcase it to a degree. I noticed after opening it, it's not this pronounced with the lighting, which you'll see in a minute here. And then I also noticed one interesting feature also, and they kind of show it in different case scenarios here where they have red, green, and then like a bluish back there, and they do talk about how the lighting is customizable, show off the headphone jack there, and then the macro buttons there. So this would be technically marketed as a Pro Controller alternative, so something you can buy. However, it is wired, so keep that in mind. It's not wireless at all, and we're missing a lot of features. If you saw the previous video, you probably already know which ones we're missing here. It's quite a bit. So get this guy out of there, and we have our controller here. It is clear, like completely clear. So let me go ahead and rip this guy out of here. Comes with a 10-foot cable that does plug in, which I prefer that. If we're gonna have wired controllers, I prefer that it plugs in. So that way if somebody like runs by and like trips over it, a dog or a younger kid or something, runs past it, rips it off, it has a chance of just pulling this from the controller rather than ripping your whole system down or ripping the controller out of your hands and having it go flying and maybe smash into the ground or the wall or something. I've heard some stories. I've worked video game retail before, and if you have, you know what I'm talking about here. Those breakaway cables for the original Xbox was a big deal back then. Yes, absolutely was. It saved quite a few systems, I'm sure. So looking at this guy, we have, again, our 10-foot cable. It is a micro USB, not a fan. Again, USB Type-C all the way, please. No more of this micro USB stuff. I think we're past this now. So no more of that PDP, okay? You're gonna need this, by the way. The instructions have quite a bit of information about actually using the lighting that's in here. Now, if we take a quick look around the controller, it is hard plastic, and unfortunately, while it is grippable, I really wish they had some kind of coating, at least down here where your palms are. It is complete plastic. Like there is no rubberized texture, just something that makes it a bit easier. Now, because it is plastic, it does kind of get, it's more grippy as maybe your palm gets a little sweatier, or just in general as you rub against it, it will start to kind of grip, but it's just not very comfortable with where you are holding this controller. Some sort of rubberized texture that starts from here and goes down would have, I think, been a lot better. Now, of course, this is PDP's Deluxe Audio Plus controller, so we have our headphone jack on the bottom. It is fully wired, so that's pretty much, I guess, why this headphone jack works. It just runs through the wire and connects. Again, it's one less thing, I guess, to run across the floor if you want to hook up your audio to it. Although we're to the point now where we're starting to get some wireless setups to where it works okay as well, where you could plug in like a headphone, like the USB headphones, you could plug them into the side that's wireless. This does come off. This is our macro buttons, so you can take this off if you would like or leave it on. Some people might take it off if they don't want to accidentally press it, but it's very easy, of course, to program it, as we've talked about before, where you have your button here that kind of is our function button and does all kinds of stuff, whether it deals with the lighting, the audio, or of course, just pairing up our macro. So I said you might want to hold on to this instruction manual. I know generally we'll just throw these things to the side and not even look at them, but this is a controller where I recommend actually reading through this because there are a few more lighting options than I thought there would be with this. I thought this would be kind of an afterthought, like you press a button and oh, it lights up and that's it. No, there are a few things here. You have kind of the breathing effect where it will kind of slowly light up and light down. You have one that just kind of goes through the whole spectrum slowly and fades through them. Basically, a lot of effects that you might be used to with other RGB products, whether you're used to it with the PC, for example, or maybe you have some experiences with other Afterglow controllers. For 30 bucks, I have to at least give them credit here because it's not too much more expensive than one of the regular ones. They put a little bit of thought, at least, into the RGB aspect. Okay, so I've brought the Switch out here. One thing I noticed, by the way, in docked mode specifically, not when I have it hooked up through a USB-C to A adapter in handheld or tabletop mode, is that this will actually turn the Switch on when it's in docked mode, which is odd. It's almost like if you're playing around with the lighting effect with the macro button or the function button, for some reason the Switch will see that as a reason to wake up. I don't know if the lights just have a different effect on the system itself, but it'll just wake up and start functioning. So very strange. I don't know if PDP accidentally made that happen. Maybe they weren't even thinking about it and it just happens to wake it up. So here we have our controller in the lowest brightness setting, and we have 4 LEDs that light up and kind of attempt anyway to put lighting throughout the controller. I say attempt because it's not the best job in terms of spreading the light everywhere. You have a function button here, and what that does is as you press and hold it, you can press ZR and light it up, and eventually it'll get to a point where it cycles around and it's just off. So you can turn the lights completely off if you want. But if we kind of go all the way up here, go up, and we can get I think a pretty good effect there where it's fairly bright. It might not come through as well on camera, to be honest, but it is pretty bright. And if we go ahead, we can cycle through it. The way you do that is you press the function button here, and then you press R or L, and those will kind of go through the different functionalities. So here it's more of a breathing, where it's kind of breathing up between lowest brightness and highest, and it slowly does that. We can go to a point where it will just cycle through all of the colors from one end to the other. So we're kind of going through like a yellow, green, and then we'll go to kind of like a blue, and then it cycles all the way back around. These are, again, basic effects that you would see in like RGB keyboards, for example. And they'll get a little crazier with some of it as well, of course, where they will light up different keys or have like a really cool wave effect. This doesn't get that crazy because there's only 4 LEDs, so there's only so much you can technically do with it. But they do have one really cool effect that it seems super distracting, but I guess it's something. So let me go to, yeah. So this is, according to them, an effect where the light will react to the sticks as you move them. So if I'm using the left stick and I'm playing a game, I'm just around the menu here, it'll do all kinds of crazy stuff as you're playing. The left stick seems to make it dimmer or brighter, and then, or the right stick, I'm sorry, makes it dimmer or brighter. The left stick just seems to jump around all over the different colors. And I feel like if I was playing like Doom, for example, just with sticks, this thing would be like a little light show going on in my hands. And I think that would be distracting for me, but you know what? There are people who really like RGB and they might get a kick out of this. Now you do have full control over which color is currently being displayed by pressing the function button and hitting left or right on the D-pad, or you just press and hold it. It'll slowly cycle through all of the different colors that it can produce. So if we go ahead and hit the function button and we just press right, we can see we'll kind of go into like a yellow, then a green, and then it'll go into like a, let's see, here we go, like a blue and then a purple, and then it'll cycle back around. So you can actually even press and hold it and eventually get to a light that you like, and then kind of just leave it, and it'll be set. And then of course you can play around with the brightness and everything. So there is quite a bit of customization here if you're looking for something that lights up but you want a certain color. Yeah, this will work. So let's talk about some of the negatives here outside of just the lighting. Shares a lot of the same negatives as the other controller that we looked at. I'll grab this guy, for example. Remember, we looked at this one. It was missing quite a bit. There was no rumble, although it was heavier and it threw me off. Remember, there are weights in there. You can see right through this and you can see the weights. But it has no rumble, has no gyro, has no NFC, and of course it is wired. This one at least has a wire that unplugs, but it's still unfortunately missing a ton of functionality that you may want to have for your games. I think the biggest thing about this is it's not necessarily a great controller to use. Again, it's like the one that I reviewed before. It's not necessarily a great controller to use, and the lighting's not bad, but I think they could do a few things to improve the lighting in general. They're using, 4 LEDs, and that might just be because of cost and everything, but I think they would get a lot more out of this if instead of it being crystal clear, if they made it more like a frosted color, and that way it would diffuse some of the light so it wouldn't be so obvious where all 4 lights were coming from, because the intensity from the 4 lights, because it's so close to the plastic on the inside, it's basically just 4 dots that you see, and it tries to spread it out, but it doesn't do a great job. I think if this was all frosted and you couldn't necessarily see exactly where the light was, I think it would look a lot better, and it would probably diffuse and spread the light out much better as well. But I'll at least give them some credit here, because tackling an RGB lit up controller for $30 with a headphone jack and everything probably isn't the easiest thing to necessarily do, and I hope they stick with it. Again, I wish some of these controller manufacturers like PDP and PowerA and stuff weren't so afraid of a more expensive controller, even one that's closer to a Pro Controller in pricing, if it has the same features, or at least close to it. I know HD Rumble is still like a whole thing, but we've seen controllers do everything but HD Rumble. They just put regular Rumble in, and if you can do that with a diffused front and multiple LEDs inside, I think you might have something that people would really get a kick out of, at least for it being customizable. Something like this, I mean, this is something that we're missing with Switch controllers, so why not? But let me know what you guys think about this controller down below. Thanks guys for watching. Make sure you like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys next time.